Hey there, I'm Ethan, your real-life English fluency coach, and today we're learning English with the World Cup, which is a multicultural event where people from all different nations come together to play and celebrate their different cultures. Plus, the language that they all use to communicate is English. So even if you are not a soccer fan, well, in today's lesson, we're going to give you a ton of vocabulary that you can actually use in your everyday life. Plus, you will get some tips on how to learn English on your own. So the World Cup really is a great living example of how English is the global language. So much so that the lyrics of the official soundtrack for this year's World Cup are in English. And the chorus actually has a really beautiful message. We better together. But you may be asking yourself, Ethan, shouldn't it be we are better together? That's what I always learned in school. Well, you would be correct. That is definitely the official grammar rule, is that there should be an auxiliary verb here. But first of all, oftentimes in speaking, natives will drop the auxiliary verbs. Now this is very colloquial, so you shouldn't use it in a formal setting or when you're writing, but it's something you can observe that happens.
How you doing?
But did you know also that better can be used as a verb, meaning to improve something? So for example, if you study more, you can better your score on the exam. So they could also be saying that, when we come together, we blend our cultures, we share different ideas, that we become so much more than we could on our own, but also we grow ourselves. It's a really beautiful message, isn't it? So in that global citizenship spirit, let's jump into today's lesson with the World Cup. Aw, yeah. So the first video that we're going to look at today is from French player Kylian Mbappe, who's talking to David Beckham about expectations for playing in the World Cup.
People don't know what it is to have this pressure to play, because you have too much energy to play, to give your best, and sometimes you go and
so he has good vocabulary for sure.
You do some things, and the word card is something.
He could work on his pronunciation.
I can understand what
I think a lot of the
World Cup you have, this
closed vowels he doesn't say so accurately.
This adrenaline, you want to do your best, and you go strong, and it is. People don't know what it is to have this pressure to play, because you have too much energy to play.
Good start. He uses the advanced structure, what it is like. This is used to describe something or someone, just as Kylian used to talk about the pressure of playing a big game, such as the World Cup. You can also use this expression as a question. For example, what was your trip like? This means you want the person to describe their trip.
Because you have too much energy to play, to give your best, and sometimes you go and you do some things, and the word card is something can happen.
He shows a good command of the language here by using a nice collocation, to give your best, which means to try as hard as you can. He's saying that sometimes the player can do all the hard work, but because of the pressure of playing a big game, stuff can happen and they get a red card. A red card in a soccer game means that the player is being ejected or expelled from the game. They can't play that match anymore.
I can understand what is when you're playing the World Cup. You have this adrenaline. You want to do your best, and you go strong. And
advanced speakers are normally able to give specific names to what they are feeling or experiencing, just like Kylian did here. He used the word adrenaline, which is the substance released in the body when going under a lot of stress or dealing with different emotions. Then, he also uses the expression go strong, which means to do whatever it takes to succeed. Check out it being used in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a comedy cop show.
Can't let Ozarov ditch the drugs. Gotta go in fast and strong.
I don't know about you, but I could use some adrenaline.
Before we continue, one of the greatest things about following sports and current events is how they can bring people together, to comment on the latest win or the shocking loss, and to root together for a team, for a common goal, right? So now you can do that in English with the Real Life app. This really is your passport to the world, where every day you can have fun, dynamic conversations in English, make friends from all around the world, and of course, practice your English every day. And it gets even better. It's absolutely free for you to download and start speaking right now. So simply click up here or down in the description below to find that, or you can look for Real Life English in your favorite app store. So now let's look at South Korean player Son Heung-min, who plays for the English team Tottenham, sitting down in an interview with actor Tom Holland to discuss winning the 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶 award, which is an award that is given for the most beautiful goal scored in the year. Oh, it's weird to say Spider-Man with a British accent.
Were you going for goal when you got the ball, or were you just trying to make a run and that opportunity came in and then you just went?
No, obviously, I think when I received the ball in my box, I tried to pass it.
Right.
I'm never gonna dribble all the people there. Certainly, I start dribbling, and after 2 seconds, I was 1v1 with the keeper, and then I was like, what? I couldn't believe, you know?
Couldn't believe it. But he's got really good English, definitely a strong British accent, with some probably just small errors, but like really good.
Were you going for goal when you got the ball, or were you just trying to make a run and that opportunity came in and then you just went?
First off, kudos to Heung-min's listening skills and vocabulary awareness. Tom Holland makes use of some phrasal verbs and expressions that require a good level of English, and by his response, we can see that we totally understood them. The first phrasal verb is go for. This means to decide to do or to choose something. For example, I feel like going for ice cream in the evening. Would you like to join me? Then he asks, were you just trying to make a run? This is a common expression in soccer that means to start running in order to escape from something. Normally, that's the first reaction a player has when they see an opponent approaching. You can also use this expression slightly differently and say, make a run at something, to express the idea of trying to win something such as a negotiation or political run. Check out how it is used in Mad Men when they find out that the company is in negotiation to be sold.
I apologize you had to find out this way. Believe me, it wasn't my decision.
Well, they've only got me for a year. You for what, 3? We'll make another run at it.
Certainly, I start dribbling, and after 2 seconds, I was 1v1 with the keeper. And then
So we can see that he totally dominates the vocabulary of his field. He uses the exact word to describe this very common action in soccer, which is to dribble. Then he uses the word keeper, which is short for goalkeeper, the player responsible for stopping the opposing team from scoring a goal. Do you know what this is called in American English? Keepy, goalie, blocky. And a great expression here is one-on-one. If two people do or discuss something one-on-one, it means they do it directly without the intervention of someone else. For example, I had a one-on-one with my boss to discuss the next steps of the project. Let's move on to the next part.
1v1 with the keeper, and then I was like, what? I couldn't believe, you know?
Something that natives do and that Heung-min has mastered too is to use conversational fillers. He used, I was like, what? To add some drama to the story and keep the listener engaged and, to ask for confirmation and approval that Tom was following the story. All right, so now let's move on to Pique, who is from Barcelona, where I live. And in this interview, he's talking all about the future plans that he has, in particular about managing and owning FC Andorra, which he hopes to take forward to a championship.
At the end of the day, one of my ideas that some days I want to do it, some days I don't want to do it. It depends on the day. I always had the idea to be the president of Barcelona.
He speaks really Spanish with his accent, or Catalan, but in general, like really good.
This experience with Andorra has helped me a lot to understand how to manage a club. It's true that you cannot compare both clubs because it doesn't make any sense. But starting a project like this, that it's a very small club and how little by little it's growing, it's a great experience.
We can tell that he has a strong accent, but that doesn't interfere with the comprehension of what he's saying at all. He used a great expression, at the end of the day.
At the end of the day,
You can use it to show a conclusion, especially when talking about the most important fact of a situation, like in this example.
The end of the day comes down to the same question I've been asking for the last 20 years. Do you want some of this?
I always had the idea to be the president of Barcelona. This experience with Andorra has helped me a lot to understand how to manage a club.
Interesting. Here we can see how good his English is as he makes use of the present perfect to describe the experience he's having as a club manager. Most learners confuse it with the simple past. Do you also confuse them? Check out this explanation that Kase and I gave on a lesson on our other channel, Real Life English.
Do I know when to use the past simple or the present perfect?
It's a little bit complex, but there's like a rule of thumb that most of the times will work. When something begins in the past and then continues up until now, you use the present perfect. So for example, I've been in Brazil for 2 weeks. That means that I'm still in Brazil. But something that used the past tense is already finished. So, you know, next week I'll be saying I was in Brazil for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Let's check out the next part of Pique's interview.
It's true that you cannot compare both clubs because it doesn't make any sense. But starting a project like this, that it's a very small club and how little by little it's growing, it's a great experience.
Great. Did you notice how his speech is well connected? The reason for this is the use of conjunctions. These are words like because, but, and if that are used to connect words and phrases to better link your ideas, thus making you feel and sound more fluent. Check out how Anitta, a Brazilian singer with advanced English, uses conjunctions too.
So I used to work in a store before everything, and my first job was in a store, and I was so bad at it because people were wearing things and I couldn't tell they were looking good. So, but I needed for them to buy it.
Now speaking of Brazil, we're going to take a look at a clip from one of its most famous players, Neymar Jr., on a post that he recently shared on social media.
Hello, Bjorn. 2 years that you bring me to Puma family. Thank you for everything. Bye. See you in Qatar. Ciao, ciao.
Most of Neymar's international interviews are actually in Spanish, which he has shown great fluency in.
Muchas ganas de jugar, muchas ganas de estar ahí en el mundial. Mi último mundial no ha sido muy bueno por la espalda, por todo que me pasó.
Now, when it comes to English, we can see that he shows the characteristics of an intermediate level speaker. He mostly uses content words. These are the words that carry meaning, like nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. However, a more advanced speaker is able to use function words, like articles, connectors, and prepositions to express their ideas more accurately. For example, a more advanced way of saying this sentence,
2 years that you bring me to Puma family,
would be, this is the second year that you have brought me into the Puma family. Or, it's been 2 years since you brought me into the Puma family.
Thank you for everything.
The sound in words like everything, going, and interesting can be tricky for non-natives to pronounce. Neymar pronounces it almost like a k sound.
Everything.
To make the sound correctly, it's important to pass the air through your nose. You pull the back of your tongue towards your throat and stop the air in your mouth. If you make it correctly, you should be able to stretch out the sound like this.
Bye. See you in Qatar. Ciao, ciao.
Another trait of lower intermediate learners is using very short sentences just to communicate a certain message. He doesn't expand on what he wants to say. It's the opposite of what Pique did. Although this is not necessarily wrong, this is not ideal for those who want to become confident, natural speakers. So I hope that you enjoyed today's lesson and that some of what you learned might be useful for some upcoming conversations you'll be having during the World Cup. And for sure, take a moment to comment down below. Let me know where you're from and how you think your country is going to do in the World Cup. And of course, a great way for you to practice your English already is by interacting with your fellow learners there. So thanks so much for joining me today. Yeah. By the way, despite being hard to find interviews in English with Neymar, we were able to take a more thorough look at his English skills when he met one of his idols, Will Smith. Check it out.
Finally! We've been trying to meet for about 10 years. This is our first meeting and we made it happen. And it's a surprise, he didn't even know. He didn't know.
Big surprise. I'm very happy.
I've followed your career for a long time, so.
I follow you too.